I recently stumbled into the world of the deep web, and let me tell you, it was an experience I won't forget anytime soon. I'm not going to name the YouTube series or channel that sparked my curiosity because, honestly, I don't gain anything by promoting it. I just got curious, watched a video on how to access the deep web, and dove in headfirst without doing much research. Big mistake. Huge. I quickly realized that using Windows for this kind of exploration was a terrible idea. It's the most common operating system, which makes it an easy target for hackers. I knew I should have booted a live USB with a Linux distribution, something I could have easily found with a quick Google search. But I hesitated, worried that if something went wrong with my laptop, I'd be stuck without a replacement. Since I can't afford a new one right now, I decided to get creative and use my Android tablet instead. Genius move, right? Well, maybe not. After downloading a couple of VPN apps, I felt like I was ready to dive into the deep web. I was like a kid in a candy store, except the candy was, well, let's just say it wasn't for kids. I had no idea what I was doing, but my curiosity was off the charts. I knew the deep web had a reputation for being shady, but I didn't expect to stumble across some of the things I saw. It was unsettling, to say the least. I almost shut everything down right then and there, but I convinced myself it was just bad luck and decided to tread more carefully. Let me be clear. I'm not into anything weird or illegal, but some of the images I saw are burned into my brain. I'll spare you the details, but trust me, it's not something you want to see. Late one night, around 3 a.m., I figured it was the perfect time to continue exploring. I'd heard that the deep web is less active at night, so I thought it might be safer. I found some bizarre sites. Everything from religious material, you'd be surprised how many Satanists are out there, though most seemed like edgy teenagers rebelling against their parents, to strange social networking and email services. I noped out of those pretty quickly. I wasn't looking for trouble, scams, or harassment. There were also tons of conspiracy theory blogs. I'm talking everything from Justin Bieber being a reptilian Illuminati member to leaked documents about human experimentation. I even found a guy claiming he'd discovered a way to travel between dimensions. Honestly, I think he just stumbled into the wrong kind of rabbit hole, if you know what I mean. But the human experimentation stuff, that was genuinely terrifying. If I had even a shred of faith in humanity left, I would have lost it then and there. One of the most disturbing things I came across was the so-called Red Room. I really hope it's not real and that it's all just some elaborate hoax. But the thought of it being real is enough to keep me up at night. As I kept browsing, I found all sorts of other weird stuff. Weaponry, illegal pharmacies, pirated movies, hackers for hire, hitmen, virus programmers, you name it, it was there. There was even a site selling old marked dollar bills that were supposedly meant for destruction. Not exactly great for the economy. But not everything was dark and twisted. I stumbled across a site run by a brilliant guy who was developing his own operating system. He even had games and other software that were surprisingly well made. It was a refreshing break from the chaos. I also found a fictional cult that called themselves something like the Enlightened Ones. The people there weren't as crazy as I expected, just a bit paranoid and overly philosophical. Then I found a site that claimed to give access to other people's webcams. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on it. I thought I might see something interesting, but instead, I found a bunch of people staring at their screens like zombies, their eyes darting around. I laughed at first, but then I saw myself reflected in my own camera. I froze. I quickly covered the camera and logged off, realizing how stupid and illegal my actions were. That was the moment I decided to call it quits and return to the regular internet. I thought my deep web adventures were behind me until my Skype started ringing. It was an unknown number, and I figured it might be a friend testing the app. I'd been bugging one of them to connect so we could chat while gaming on Steam. But when I answered, there was silence at first, followed by a man's voice. He sounded older, maybe in his 50s, and everything about the call felt off. I hung up immediately, deleted all the deep web-related apps from my tablet, and rebooted my router. To this day, I have no idea how that guy got my Skype number, and I don't want to know. So, if you're thinking about exploring the deep web, please be careful. Do your homework first. Talk to someone who knows how to set up a proper VPN or other forms of anonymity. Trust me, the stuff you find on the Google Play Store isn't going to cut it. Stay safe out there. The dark web is a grim place, a cesspool where humanity's worst instincts fester. It's a world of shadows, where the monstrous thrive, and it's where I've chosen to work. I'm what's known as a white hat, a hacker who fights on the side of good. My job is to dismantle vile markets, trace the paths of those who hide in the darkness, and shine a light where most fear to look. Most days, I sit in my dimly lit apartment, the glow of my monitors the only illumination, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I peel back layers of encrypted filth. It's not a job for the faint of heart, but I'm damn good at it. I've seen horrors that defy imagination, things no one should ever witness. But the case that still haunts me began like any other. A routine sweep led me to a marketplace buried deep in the web's underbelly. This one was different, though. It advertised human lives as commodities, young and old, with glossy images and cold, clinical descriptions. I'd seen similar sites before, but this one had a polished, professional veneer. It was a digital fortress, almost daring anyone to try to breach its walls. I remember spending days unraveling its defenses, layer by layer, like peeling an onion. It was slow, grueling work, and the site's security was crafted by someone who knew what they were doing. But no system is impenetrable, and by the end of the third day I was in. The database was vast, filled with entries detailing victims. Names, ages, photos, and chillingly precise descriptions of their usefulness. Each profile was a silent scream, a plea buried in ones and zeros. As I extracted the data, I began piecing together patterns, names, and connections. I logged everything meticulously, building a dossier for the authorities. Then I found her, a girl from the Philippines, no older than 12. Her photo showed a child with wide, frightened eyes and a forced smile. Her profile was detailed in a way that made my stomach churn. But something about her entry stood out. An odd note in the metadata, a breadcrumb someone had carelessly left behind. It was a payment log, and it didn't lead to a buyer. It led back to her family. I ran her name through every database I could access, cross-referencing missing persons reports, social media posts, and news articles. The trail was faint, but it was there. She had disappeared months ago, her last known sighting in a small village. The local news barely mentioned it, and her parents never reported her missing. Instead, their lives had taken a curious turn. I found pictures of them on social media, standing in front of a newly built house, bragging about a blessing that had come their way. Expensive clothes, lavish parties, smiles plastered across their faces. It didn't add up. Where does a poor family suddenly get that kind of money? The pieces clicked together, forming a grotesque puzzle I wish I hadn't solved. They sold her, their own flesh and blood, handed over to monsters for a better life. I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. It wasn't just the marketplace. It was the betrayal, the abandonment, the cold calculations that turned a child into currency. I've always kept my work professional, detached, but this time I couldn't stop thinking about her. She wasn't just a name in a database anymore. She was a girl who had been discarded like trash, her life ripped apart by the people who were supposed to love her most. I dug deeper, poring over bank records, private messages, anything I could find. Every transaction told a story, and the trail was damning. The deposit that coincided with her disappearance, the gradual splurge on luxuries, they weren't just complicit. They were thriving off her suffering. The more I uncovered, the more anger crept in. My work had always been about dismantling systems, not judging individuals, but this felt personal. Her image haunted me. That forced smile, the terror in her eyes, couldn't shake it. For weeks, I compiled evidence, building a case that would hold up under scrutiny. The authorities would take it from there. That's how it always worked. But with each passing day, the thought of her family living in comfort while she suffered gnawed at me. They had bought their happiness with her life. It was monstrous. One night, as I sifted through the last of the data, I made a decision. I wouldn't just hand over the evidence and walk away. I would make them feel the weight of what they'd done. They couldn't be allowed to forget her, to erase her like she was nothing. I crafted an anonymous, untraceable email, attaching photos of their daughter from the marketplace. Blurred enough to protect her dignity but unmistakable. I sent it to them with no words, just images. I wanted them to see her, to remember what they'd done. I'll never know if they opened it, but I imagined the guilt festering inside them like a rot. It wasn't justice, but it was something. The marketplace was gone within days, wiped clean from the dark web. My work there was done, and the authorities had the evidence they needed to start tracking the network. But her face stayed with me, a ghost I couldn't exorcise. I like to think she's still alive somewhere, that the system I helped dismantle gave her a chance at freedom. But I know better. The dark web doesn't let go of its victims easily. Still, I keep working, tearing down one monster at a time. Because if I don't, who will? I'll admit it, I have a vice. Pot is my go-to, my all-time favorite escape. But when I want something stronger, I usually buy it from a friend who supplies me. However, there was one time when my usual dealer was unavailable, and a college friend suggested something I'd never considered before: ordering through the deep web. At the time, I had no idea what he was talking about, but he explained it in broad strokes. He even downloaded a browser called Tor on my computer and left me 3 handwritten URLs. Sites where I could buy anything from my usual weed to substances I'd never even heard of. And when I say anything, I mean anything. High-purity coke, exotic drugs made from plants at the edge of the world. It was all there, with prices to match. What surprised me most was how easy it was. A few clicks, a Bitcoin transfer, and boom, whatever I wanted showed up in my mailbox. But I'm not just an addict. I'm also a curious person. The dark web felt like discovering a new world. At first, I only used it to buy drugs from the sites my friend recommended. But one night, I was sober and bored at home, a rare combination for me, so I decided to open Tor and see what else was out there. My friends had warned me about the dangers, but that night, curiosity got the better of me. I jumped in. If you've ever been on the dark web, you know it's not like Google. You can't just search for red rooms or hitmen for hire and get results. You have to find links to those sites first. So, I started Googling, trying to find URLs for the darkest corners of the web. I know it sounds weird to actively search for the worst, but I had this morbid curiosity pulling me in. I spent hours looking for links, but most of what I found was either too basic or didn't work. I was about to give up when I stumbled across a subreddit dedicated to the deep web. I didn't expect much, but as I scrolled through the new section, I saw it. A post titled Murder and the Life of the Murder Services. The text box contained what looked like a random string of numbers and letters. It took me a second to realize it was a link, probably to a hitman site. I pasted the link into Tor, and to my surprise, it worked. The site was called Assassins, Assassination and Life Destruction Services. At the top was a skull inside what looked like a tunnel. I laughed. It had to be fake, right? But as I scrolled down, I saw a list of services, each more horrifying than the last. There was even a box that said place order. I was tempted to type something in, just to see what would happen, but I thought better of it. I was about to close my laptop when I heard a knock at the door. I live alone, so late-night visitors are rare. When I opened the door, it was my friend Mark, my usual dealer. He handed me a huge bag of weed, and we smoked for a while. After that, everything gets hazy. I don't remember much, but I woke up around 9 a.m. on the couch, feeling like I'd only slept for 2 hours. I made coffee, sat down to play video games, and opened my laptop to check my emails. That's when I saw it, an order confirmation from the hitman site. I had ordered my own death. I laughed it off at first. Even stoned, I usually make sensible decisions, so I couldn't believe I'd done something so stupid. But as the day went on, I started to feel uneasy. Later that night, I noticed a dark sedan parked across the street. I didn't see it pull up, but there it was, just sitting there. My heart raced. What if the site was real? I grabbed a kitchen knife, tucked it into my hoodie pocket, and went outside to confront whoever was in the car. But when I knocked on the window, no one answered. I peered inside and saw the seats were empty. I waited for half an hour, but no one showed up. Eventually, I went back inside to eat dinner. As I was pulling my food out of the oven, I glanced out the window again. The car was gone. I didn't even hear it drive away. My paranoia spiked. I locked all the doors and closed the curtains, trying to calm down. But just as I started to relax, the power went out. I froze, waiting for something, anything to happen. About 30 seconds later, the lights came back on, and all the appliances beeped. Then I heard knocking at the door. I asked who it was, but no one answered. I waited, my heart pounding, before finally gathering the courage to open the door. No one was there, but on the ground was a black envelope with no return address. I brought it inside and opened it. Inside were photos of me, taken from my computer, showing me with bloodshot eyes, looking lost. The timestamp in the corner showed they were taken at 3 a.m., around the time I'd placed the order. Behind the last photo was a handwritten note. "Do not play with what you do not know. Girl, you were lucky today. If I see you on my site again, you're dead. Stay away from the dark web." My whole body started shaking. I felt sick and ran to the bathroom to vomit. When I came out, I immediately deleted Tor from my computer and had it formatted the next day. That was the last time I ever ventured into the dark web.